Welcome to Raging Moderates. I'm Scott Galloway.
And I'm Jessica Tarlov.
Jessica, I'm in Nashville. I'm trying to escape the decline of the U.S., so I'm in Nashville.
So you went to
Do you
the
think that'll
South?
help? Yes, I went to Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of a mental spa weekend.
Speaking gig?
Speaking gig. A lot of nice people walking around with badges saying, "Hey, I love your content." I'm like, "Thanks, boss." And I give him a little gun shoot. I go, and I wink at him. That's what my dad used to do. He used to go,
Cowboy
shoot
Galloway.
me. Yeah, that's right.
Charming.
Yeah. I'm trying to think if anything's going on. Oh, yeah, this is what's going on. So,
Yeah.
in a move that's straight out of an authoritarian playbook, ABC just yanked Jimmy Kimmel's late night show indefinitely. Why? Because Trump's FCC chair publicly threatened to go after ABC's broadcast licenses unless the network punished Kimmel for his comments about Charlie Kirk's alleged killer.
I think that it's really sort of past time that a lot of these licensed broadcasters themselves push back on Comcast and Disney and say, listen, we are going to preempt. We are not going to run Kimmel anymore until you straighten this out, because we licensed broadcaster, are running the possibility of fines or license revocation from the FCC if we continue to run content that ends up being a pattern of news distortion.
Within hours, affiliates with business before the administration piled on, and Disney caved. Free speech groups are calling it corporate cowardice. Trump, meanwhile, is cheering from the sidelines. Let's watch the clip that led to the firing of Jimmy Kimmel.
We hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them, and doing everything they can to score political points from it. In between the finger pointing, there was grieving. On Friday, the White House flew the flags at half-staff, which got some criticism. But on a human level, you can see how hard the president is taking this.
My condolences on the loss of your friend Charlie Kirk. May I ask, sir, personally, how are you holding up over the last day and a half, sir?
I think very good. And by the way, right there, you see all the trucks? They've just started construction of the new ballroom for the White House, which is something they've been trying to get, as you know, for about 150 years. And it's going to be a beauty.
Yes. He's at the fourth stage of grief, construction. Demolition, construction. This is not how an adult grieves the murder of someone he called a friend. This is how a 4-year-old mourns a goldfish.
Well, we gotta call balls and strikes here. That was clearly inflammatory rhetoric that's going to lead to violence. That was beyond the pale, Jess. I've never heard anything like that, except for 100 times on this show we've said things much more critical of Trump. That'd be like, I don't know, saying that the president should be jailed, tried, and executed, which is what Charlie Kirk said about President Biden, which is allowed, which is protected under free speech. So this feels, we'll get to the authoritarian nature of this, but this feels like, okay, we've figured out a way such that if we pull people over, not even for a speeding ticket, but for a parking ticket, we're going to accuse them of double murder. It just feels like they could have found something a little bit more, I don't know, incendiary. It's almost as if they're testing the public and these media firms to see how far they can push them. What are your thoughts?
Well, they're definitely doing that. And it's not so much of a test, because they know that at least 99% are rolling over and, settling, paying whatever they need to, just trying to keep their doors open. But I will say, the second part of the joke about Trump, that doesn't bother me. What it seems like really set people off was the first part of it, which they read as making it seem as though this was a MAGA person that had assassinated Charlie Kirk. This was before the text messages between alleged assassin Tyler Robinson and his roommate came out. And that seems to be what's really inflaming them. Now, I think that there would have been an opportunity, and it's been reported that Jimmy Kimmel was going to address this on his show last night before he got yanked, to talk about this, because we have evidence now that shows that Tyler Robinson was not MAGA. This wasn't about the Groypers versus the mainstream conservatives. This wasn't, Nick Fuentes versus Charlie Kirk. This was something different. And, we still need to absolutely know more, saying that he was part of a leftist cabal. I have yet to see evidence of that. He seems quite politically unaffiliated, frankly. He seems like a nihilistic gamer kid that was in a relationship with someone who is part of a community that is regularly targeted. So they should have let Jimmy Kimmel come on and make his apology or give his explanation for that. But all of this is part of the plan. And, we've both been on with Bill Maher, you more than me, but he always says this is the slow moving coup, right? But it feels like it's moving a lot faster than it used to be. Just even looking at what's gone on through, the first 9 months of the Trump administration. I understand we're not on third world standards. This is still, the first world. But you look at pulling people off air for speech you disagree with. And I want to go through also, all the things that Brendan Carr said about protected speech when he used to be a normal human being, I guess, and, was a Biden appointee as well. So pulling people off, suing the New York Times $15 billion for defamation, doesn't let the AP in the press pool. You're looking at national troops in the streets of DC and Los Angeles, heading to Memphis. Chicago will be next on the list. You have the universities bending the knee. They're paying hundreds of millions of dollars to save their research labs, letting the government have a say on who comes in and who can say what on campus. The law firms also bending the knee. I don't know if you saw this, but Skadden is in talks to do pro bono work for the Heritage Foundation. Talk about an unholy alliance that people who, went to the top law schools in this country and dreamed of being able to walk through the doors of Skadden are saying, are you fucking kidding me? Like, I'm going to work for the Project 2025 guys. It doesn't feel like a slow creep anymore. And I just took my daughter to school and I'm walking around the streets and everything looks normal, right? People are out there getting their coffees, they're doing whatever, chatting on their phones. But you can't shake this feeling that the earth, kind of the underpinnings of American society as the founders wanted it, are being thrust around so quickly and obviously that you have to sit up and pay attention. And that requires nonviolent civil disobedience. You have to go out and make your voice heard. Sitting back here in the keyboard warring doesn't work. They own the algorithm anyway.
Yeah, I thought that was really well said. So a few things. One, the only thing I would take issue with, and I'm cherry picking a little bit, but I don't think Jimmy Kimmel, and I don't think that's what you meant. I don't think he owes anybody an apology. I don't
That's
think
totally
this
fair.
notion-
I just think it might have helped to at least make a clarification.
Yeah, but he doesn't need to clarify fucking anything. You mentioned Bill Maher. Bill Maher has consistently referred to Trump as Orange Hitler. I have said that these are fascist tendencies and they get all bent out of shape. You can't compare these people to fascists. It connotes violence. No, it doesn't. We have free speech all the time. And by the way, if you want people to stop comparing you to fascists, stop acting like fucking fascists. And by the way, fascists and a decline in authoritarianism, a key point is to silence the media. And I like what you said, though. What do you do about it? Because this is what Democrats and the public and the media are going to do over the next 48, 72 hours, is we're going to try and parse issues, talk about it legal. Like, we know what's going on here. This is an FCC chairman who is not doing his job, who is a crony and basically an apostle of the president and is going after and trying to revoke the licenses. They got the knee bent from CBS, that's now under the direct control of the son of a huge Republican donor. And they are trying to revoke the licenses and intimidate NBC and ABC. And what you have, or what you've seen, is basically everyone so far is bending the knee. And I go back to what Margaret Thatcher said. She said, I want victory at an acceptable cost. And so what that means today is we have to make this cost unacceptable. And that is, rather than sitting around and clutching our pearls and talking about First Amendment and how wrong this is and parsing every word, Jimmy Kimmel said, we need to move to making this an unacceptable cost for the administration to move this country towards an authoritarian state. And I've been spending the morning, as you imagine. I got up at like 4 a.m. and still jet lagged and started doing a bunch of research around, okay, what can be done? And these are some of the ideas I have. One, it's pretty easy. One is, there's trivial ones and then there's meaningful ones. One is to cancel your Disney Plus subscription. The other is to make it an unacceptable cost, to make it really expensive for people to bend the knee. By the way, Bob Iger, history is not going to be kind to you. You are Neville Chamberlain in a cashmere sweater right now. And then go to the more substantive ones. First off, Democrats should absolutely shut the government down. Let chaos reign. They don't want co-equal branches of government. Fine, shut the government down, because right now we don't have a government of the people, so they shouldn't continue to finance a government. that is increasingly minority representation of people on the far, far right. Two, I do think there is something to the notion of, I was obsessed with the interest rate cut yesterday and some of the economic data. For the first time, the top 10% income earning households are now responsible for almost half of consumer spending. In other words, they're the only ones holding up the economy. And the really interesting data in that is that the top 3.33% are responsible for like 30% of the spending. And I was trying to think, how could we really hurt them? And I'm now of the mind that we should probably think about some sort of economic strike. And that is trying to figure out a way to pull in our spending, our reins, and basically send an economic message. Because the only thing that seems to really resonate with consumers and voters in this administration is money and economics. And I do think that if people just slowed down their spending or delayed their mortgage payment, their credit card payment, stopped whatever it is, buying a coffee every day, and there was a tangible tick down, just 1-2% in the economy, that would have a surprisingly profound effect. And even more so, I go to the wealthiest 1% of Americans. If they were to, and quite frankly, they would have a much easier time reducing their spending because they're spending so much fucking money right now.
Yeah.
So this is like one less trip to St. Bart's or stopping their car payment or just not spending as much, because the top 1% right now is literally spending like there's no tomorrow. Post-COVID, live for today, and they also have so much money. But I'm now about a spending strike. I'm also contemplating, and I don't know how much of this is emotional and jet lag speaking, I'm contemplating transfer. I have assets with Goldman Sachs, Northern Trust, Bank of America, Silicon Valley Bank. I am contemplating transferring all of my assets to Lloyd's or HSBC and being very public about it and calling on other wealthy people and businesses to start transferring their assets to non-American banks. And you can bet that'll get the attention if there's any sort of movement towards that. But I'm kind of done with, we're going to spend the next 72 hours deciding that it is in fact wrong. Well, okay, we know it's fucking wrong, folks. The next question is, what are you going to do about it? And I agree with you, call your elected representatives, especially if your representative is Republican, but this doesn't seem to be working. So I'm now moving to the stage of, okay, what soft tissue can we press on? And the soft tissue that always comes up for me is quite frank. And by the way, there's no free lunch here. People will lose their jobs if it worked. It would slow down the economy. It would be bad for the American worker. There would be real ramifications here. But I think fighting this out on MSNBC and getting constitutional lawyers to come on and say why this is so wrong and us clutching the mother of all intellectual pearls, I'm like, okay, we need to get to the action part of this. And I think we need a leader and somebody to prop up and say, okay, we need you to cut your Christmas spending by 10% if you're, average household. And if you're a wealthy household, we need you to take Christmas off and not buy Van Cleef. For your wife and your three mistresses, we need you to maybe not go to St. Bart's, but stay home this year. Don't take a private jet, whatever it is. But the top 1%, and it used to be the top 1% was Republicans. I increasingly find the top 1% now is Democrats who have some fidelity to the great principles that put them in the 1%, including rule of law and free speech. Those people, if they rallied, could have a very significant impact at the lowest cost possible. Because the reality is, the spending of the top 1%, you could cut 20% of it, and it wouldn't really affect your quality of life. Anyways, I'm trying to think creatively around some sort of massive movement where Jamie Dimon goes, fuck, people are transferring their assets out to my European competitors. Any reactions to kind of a move to action, Jess?
Well, I'm all for doing things, especially if they're going to draw attention. And it seems like the only thing that sends up flares right now is money. And so, yeah, if, people want to go over and, start banking at Coots, they have a beautiful black card and they'll treat you like a king. And you should go ahead and do that. But I think that there are two things, I guess, that I would say. Like, you talk about the 1%. Now, increasingly, the 1% are voting for Democrats. Talk about that publicly and talk about why you're doing that, or talk about why you've changed your mind and you've decided, like, enough is enough and I can't do this. The second part is an education piece. And I'm not saying that people don't know, what's in the Constitution, what our foundational principles are, any of that at all. Like, the American populace is a lot smarter than certainly the Republican Party thinks that they are. But there are so many pieces of disinformation, misinformation, bad information, whatever the right word is, flying around. Like, I've even seen it, Riley Gaines tweeted this. This isn't cancel culture, it's consequence culture. And they have something that happened to them, a grievance that they're using as the predicate for whatever is happening now. And most of them are complete bullshit. So when they talk about, well, Biden going after the social media companies and telling them to, take down COVID misinformation, they have memory hold the fact that Donald Trump was in charge of the government until January 2021 through the worst parts of COVID, and that his administration worked with the social media companies to make sure that people were safe and not injecting bleach into their arms, just the same way that President Biden would have been. It's one of my huge, mind blown. I can't believe you continue to do this. And they talk about the Black Lives Matter summer. Who was in charge during Black Lives Matter? Joe Biden was a candidate for president. Kamala Harris was a vice presidential candidate for president. Donald Trump was sitting in the White House. Make them own the reality of what happened under Trump 1.0 and what is happening under Trump 2.0. So again, I know you know the Constitution probably better than me sometimes, but you need to be paying attention to the way that they're making these arguments because they're insidious and people are believing them, and it is radicalizing people.
I mean, I started looking into this morning. Here's a stat. JP Morgan is worth more than the 10 biggest European banks combined. I don't want to argue the First Amendment. I want to start voting with my feet in my wallet, and because I think that's the only thing that is probably going to move the needle here. And I am not going to be watching, what is it, Wednesday? Is Wednesday on Disney Plus?
I mean, it must make you think you had this plan to move back here. And now you're like, really? Is this going to be better?
Yeah, but it's funny you say that. A bunch of people have asked me because I'm planning on moving back in June, but this is part of the reason I am moving back. I think I told you this on October the 8th. I'm on the board, or was on the board, an investor in 2 Israeli companies. They're companies started in Israel, now based in New York. And on October the 8th, after the Paris attacks of Hamas, we tried to reach the CEOs, and we couldn't find them. And we just wanted to say, hi, how you doing? We hope your family wasn't affected. Couldn't find them. By the time they got back to us, they were already in Tel Aviv. The moment that attack happened, they went home. I think this is a time for Americans to return home and be in the fight, and be in the resistance. So I'm not one of these people that's like, oh, I'm moving out. No, fuck that. I'm moving back. The reason I'm in London is because of the incredible prosperity that American values afforded me and gave me the chance to do something wonderful with my family. So I'm actually contemplating moving back sooner because I want to be part of the resistance. Okay, let's leave it there on my faux macho from the Hyatt in Nashville. Thanks for watching this YouTube exclusive video. Please subscribe to keep getting up to the minute videos and conversations. We'll be back again soon with more quick takes.